Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. I'm Adam Zyglis, editorial cartoonist for the Buffalo News, and we thought it would be interesting if today you could get a little bit of a behind the scenes peek into the process of how a cartoon is created. And since it kind of takes a long time, we thought it would make sense just to show you the inking process. So a cartoon takes, for me, typically 2 to 3 hours to create completely, and a lot of that time is before the inking, drawing and developing the sketch, and prior to that I'm spending a lot of time thinking of what I would draw and getting my ideas together. And once I get to a certain point before my deadline, I'll get the sketch prepared. In this case, here's kind of a rough sketch to give you an idea, and I purposely, I know many of you are going to be disappointed that it's not a Trump or Hillary cartoon or something on the presidential election, but we thought it would make more sense to do something, a little offbeat and local. And in this case, it's pro-Buffalo, it's positive, to highlight the importance of our architectural legacy. So that way we can focus more on the process of the cartoon rather than getting too much into the politics of the presidential race. So I take this sketch and I will use a light box to transfer the rough sketch onto Bristol board, which is a heavier stock paper. And then from there I have my pencil lines, and I'll go over it with two microns, 2 different sizes for the outlines and the details. And hopefully that'll take only half hour, 40 minutes, so you can, it's like watching paint dry a little bit, but you can, if you have questions about the process or questions for me or comments, you can put them in the comment section under the live feed, and my colleague, talented colleague behind the camera, will relay them to me if you have any feedback. So without further ado, you can peek behind my shoulder and see how it works. Notice I love to sort of throw photo references of anything I'm drawing, all around the artwork here. So I'll add a little bit of commentary as I go, but generally I'll just kind of let you guys take it in. I always keep believe it or not, at the end of the day I still have ink all over my hand and pencil lines, so I always try to keep a blank piece of paper there to prevent smudging onto my hands.
So Adam, we have a question from Peter. Peter wants to know, how do you do the logos on the side?
The logo, do I do logos on the side? Is that a question?
Yeah, do you do logos on the side?
I used to years ago, but because of my obligation to the Buffalo News and the contract I have as a local journalist, I tend to avoid that to prevent any conflicts of interest. So thank you for thinking of me, but fortunately I don't do that right now.
Also, we have a comment from Alex. Alex says, "Love your work, Adam."
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. I'll try to keep it angled so you can see, but you'll notice as I draw that I like to kind of rotate as I crosshatch and as I do lines, but to give you a picture, I'll try to continue to angle it your direction. I'm sure I'll get emails about how this is not a proper fisherman's knot, but that's okay.
So Adam, we also have another question from Yolandi. Apologize if I mispronounced that. Do you ever get impatient with trying to finish a piece?
I'm more, I guess I don't get impatient. I get a lot of deadline anxiety because I usually start a little bit later than I want to because I'm busy trying to work different ways that I would do the cartoon. So I think the biggest struggle is, at first I would have to know when to stop, but at this point in my career, I'm getting less and less time for the artwork, and it's just trying to finish the deadline, really. Nothing's ever really finished, it's just when you decide to stop.
And we also have feedback from Valerie here. She says, "You are the best, Adam Zyglis."
I appreciate that. I probably have my family up to this trying to give me great feedback. It's always appreciated. Thank you.
So if you're just tuning in right now, we are live with Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist Adam Zyglis from the Buffalo News. Feel free to ask him questions below. We'll try to get to them. So we just have a new question from Dana. What inspires you when you're drawing?
Well, I mean, I'm fortunate in that everything I do is dependent on the news. So you know, I consume so much daily news that it provides a constant source of inspiration, and I'm so focused on the message that the artwork just sort of comes naturally at this point. And you know, in the bigger sense, I'm always inspired by all kinds of different artists, but the driving force is really just the message that I'm trying to communicate.
We have another comment from Caroline. She says, "Fellow Canisius College grad, thanks for representing the Golden Griffs well."
Nice, go Griffs. Love my experience at Canisius.
And another question from Peter, which piece was your Pulitzer for?
The award, the Pulitzer, for a portfolio, and the way it's worded, it's a portfolio of up to 20 editorial cartoons. So each year when we get our package together for the Pulitzer, it's actually a very tedious process, and I sit down with different editors and we go through the year's worth of work, and the challenge is to tell the story of the whole year within 20 cartoons, and you want to hit on all the major news items, but you also want to cover your best work. So really you have a lot of things at play, and it's a lot of, you know, some of it is just a lot of luck. You know, are you going to really strike a chord with those jurors and really capture the year for them?
All right, so we have a question from the Pulitzer Prizes Facebook account. Shout out to them. "Hi Adam, great to see you. Can you tell us what was most interesting about being part of the 2016 Pulitzer Prizes editorial cartooning jury? Apologize.
It was an amazing experience. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, I was asked to be one of the jurors on the 2016 Pulitzer Prizes, and it was really inspiring and rigorous. I mean, the best part about it is just knowing how much goes into 3 days of work and scrutiny to get, you know, the finalists narrowed down, and really reaffirmed my faith in the quality of journalism out there. You know, just seeing all my colleagues work, and it's just completely inspiring. And you know, I think that is just the most invigorating thing about it, is just being inspired by my colleagues. As you can see, it's very tedious. You know, I actually enjoy all the little details, drawing City Hall, the segments of a worm like this. It's almost therapeutic. Where other cartoonists will have more of a minimal style, I love to put texture and detail into my cartoons.
All right, so we have a question from Chris here. He wants to know, do you have a favorite cartoon or top 3 that you've drawn?
That's a really tough question, because I've been drawing for you know, almost about a dozen years for the Buffalo News, and I'm the ones that stand out are just the ones that are different for me and are visually impactful. I remember really loving a Donald Rumsfeld cartoon that was almost all black India ink, and his face was sort of at the top, and there was no words, and it had some flag-draped coffins for his tie and a folded-up flag for the triangle tie for the knot. So cartoons like that, and I also cartoons that made impact, like I drew a cartoon on the Buffalo, the bike path rapist, Altimio Sanchez, the investigation. There was a controversy after the cartoon, and so seeing the impact of that, I think, is part of why I'm doing this, is to engage the community. So those two stand out in my mind.
So question from Norm here. He wants to know, Mighty Taco or Jim's Steakout?
Oh man, you're gonna put me on the spot with that. I mean, can I say both? Depending on your mood. I mean, you can't pick one or the other. It all depends on, if it's a late night, you're on Allen, you're at the Pink or Hardware, of course you want to go to Jim's, in my opinion. Mighty is more of a daytime meal for me.
We also have a question here from Darren. What role do you think political satire plays in moving the national dialogue forward on a particular social, political, or economic issue?
Well, editorial cartoons, because they're visual satire, they reach an audience that's greater, and a different audience than sort of written columns, and they have a visceral effect. And you can get away with saying much more with visual satire than you can in a lot of ways with a written column. So it adds it pushes free speech, I think, a little farther. If it weren't there, I think free speech that we have in the country, and it's this, we say this as if we take it for granted, but we're in a presidential election where someone is talking about possibly opening up libel laws where what I would do, I could be sued for. And that is a very serious threat against our democracy, I think. Where other countries have those threats. Cartoonists get their hands broken, they get killed, they get kidnapped. So I think the best part, the role cartoonists add is just that layer of free speech. It pushes it a little farther.
All right, we have another question from Peter here. Who are your favorite editorial cartoonists?
This one's a tough one because I'm president of the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists, so I like them all. No, but I'm friends with almost all of them. I grew up following Tom Tolles, so obviously he's one of my favorites. And then Clay Bennett and Steve Sack are both mentors of mine since college, and they're both Pulitzer winners and wonderful, amazing people. And I love Matt Davies' work. Jack Oman is a personal friend. He won the Pulitzer this year, and his work is phenomenal. So really, there's a long list, and they all have different visual styles, and I like them all for different reasons. So.
Now a slightly different question from Bill Moore here. He wants to know, who is your favorite cartoonist?
I would say just growing up, I have such a fond, memory of reading Calvin and Hobbes. I mean, if you're saying any cartoonist, I loved Watterson and Gary Larson, The Far Side and Calvin and Hobbes. Those influenced me in terms of old cartoons that I grew up consuming. But I don't have a favorite because then I got into like David Levine caricatures, who would be considered a cartoonist, but it's more illustration, the New York Review of Books. So I mean, it depends on my period in my life, like which ones I'm influenced by the most.
We also have a question from Jason. Can you explain the significance of the fish head, Adam?
Oh, well, I put photo references of everything I draw, and I have a couple of fish coming up in the cartoon, so I did not purposely want them to be beheaded, although I do like sushi quite a bit, and fish cheek is an amazing delicacy, but no, this is just, you'll see as I go.
Alright, another shout out from the Pulitzer Prizes Facebook account. Were you born with these amazing skills, or did you learn to draw in school or a class?
I truly believe that anyone could be an artist, or it depends on what type of craft that you're drawn to, but everything requires practice. just I wouldn't be any better than anybody else, but when I was 5 years old, I would always draw and create my own set of characters, and made a little comic strip of Madagascar monkeys when I was little, and then I began doing other comic strips and just drawing in art class. And then eventually I got into drawing caricatures, and because I was just interested in it, and anything that had life. I love architecture as well, but anything that moved, animals or people. But it did practice, the more I would work at it, the better it is. And it's a constant growing thing. I plan to be hopefully better in 5-10 years than I am today.
All right, we have a question from Nancy here. Since you and Jeff Myers are both artists, do you hang out?
We're friends, but we both lead pretty busy lives. So when we bump into each other, it's awesome. But I think we're definitely cool with each other, and we enjoy each other quite a bit. I remember I bump into him at concerts around town. He's an awesome, excellent dude. For everyone that knows him, they can totally attest.
And it looks like we have a question from Rick. How many of your submissions are rejected by your editors?
The process I have at this point, it's pretty rare that I won't really push for something unless I know that it would. I'm not going to push something visually so provocative I know the editors wouldn't fly for it in the daily paper. So it's really one every couple of years that I actually want to draw that doesn't get in, because I'll take on a given day 4 or 5 ideas or even more, and it's all just really what's the message behind it. And if I can defend it, and if it's saying it's communicating an opinion that's important to the readership, even if it disagrees with the editorial board, my editors are behind it 100% if I can defend it. Since I signed my name on it, they give me pretty much free rein unless I'm crossing the bounds of taste for a family newspaper.
Sorry about the technical difficulties. It looks like we broke off for a little bit, but we're back live now. If you have any questions, we are live with Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist Adam Zyglis here from the Buffalo News. And right now you're seeing a special sneak peek of tomorrow's cartoon. Feel free to chime in with comments and questions. We'll try to get to them. And again, for all of you that are tuning in right now, we are live with Buffalo News political cartoonist Adam Zyglis here, and you are seeing a sneak peek of tomorrow's political cartoon. We are accepting any questions and comments. Feel free to leave them in the comments below, and we'll try to get to them. All right, so we have a comment here from Sharon. My wish has come true. As an illustrator, I've been wanting to see Adam at work.
Thank you so much. Yeah, if there's any questions on the process, very specific questions, definitely feel free. So as I mentioned before, it's usually like a 2 to 3 hour process, because after I ink, I'll scan the cartoon 2 different ways. I'll scan it as a bitmap for the newspaper, and then I'll scan it as sort of colored line work for the website and for the syndicate, where I'll add digital color. And that part, I wish, at some point I'd love to try doing the watercolor by hand, but for time purposes I use Corel Painter, and I've been flattered that a lot of my colleagues and readers have written to me thinking that I actually do the watercolor by hand. So I've been at least partially successful in tricking the eye a little bit with the texture I produce with Painter.
So we have a question from Nancy. Have you ever sold any of your original work?
I usually, the original work I'll donate for auctions, for charity, that type of thing. Since my editors, the Buffalo News, they technically, they own or co-own, have share ownership over the originals themselves. The news has to sort of sign off at any time. I will sell them. I do sell signed prints occasionally, and those they produce really well, and they have full color. Where since I color digitally, the signed prints do come out really nice.
So Adam, Sharon wants to know what kind of pens are you using?
These are Pigma microns. You can get them at Hyatt's art supplies. They're, I think, maybe around $3 a piece, and there's all different sizes, but I use the 08 and the 01. I've reduced it from like 5 or 6 different tools in my toolbox to just 2 to give it a more cohesive look throughout the cartoon. So I really will just stick with the outlines and the lettering with the larger Pigma micron, and the smaller ones I will use for the cross hatching, the 01. And I do still use India ink for, I'll break out some India ink for large sections of black, and I'll do also some techniques on Painter and Photoshop to enhance it. But in terms of the actual drawing, it's just these 2.
All right, so we have a question from Cynthia here. Adam, how long does the whole process take from vision to finish?
Well, I mean, in terms of if you include the idea work and the vision, I mean, I generally say to people like a work day, like an 8.5 hour or an 8 hour day, but you can't really measure it that way. Some days, on Thursdays, I'll typically draw and finish my cartoon for Friday and Sunday. But generally speaking, if you think of a work day, about a third of it will be spent researching and coming to, developing my opinions and figuring out the best thing to say, almost like the job of a columnist. And then the second third of the day is brainstorming, idea work that you would see a copywriter for advertising do, thinking of creative ways to express the idea or express the message. And then the final phase, that about 2 to 3 hours, would be drawing, executing the cartoon.
All right, so we have a comment here from Angelo. Your work is the best, second only to Tom Tolles. The Buffalo News and previously the Buffalo Evening News has always had the best political cartoonists.
I appreciate the kind words. It's, I'm really lucky to be in a city that has a great tradition of cartooning. I mean, even before Tolles, we had Bruce Shanks as well, and it's part of the culture of a city, I think, which is really wonderful.
And Adam, it looks like Michelle wants to know, do you have any cartoonist ID?
Cartoonist ID? I'm not sure what the question is. Is there any way you could rephrase that, please?
For Adam, is there a cartoonist you identify with?
I really think at this point I'm just always like getting inspired by different and new cartoonists, and I think that what's important and for a young cartoonist, like 10 years ago when I started even, and still now, is to be yourself as a cartoonist. So I think to really be inspired by as many influences as you can and stick to your own style and express yourself the way you want is the way to go. Before I had mentioned other cartoonists that I really admire, both editorial cartoonists and illustrators, Matt Davies, Tom Tolles, Clay Bennett, Steve Sack, and then illustrators, current working illustrators like Steve Brodner, John Cuneo, all these really interesting styles. But I like to try to still be myself and not emulate one cartoonist in particular.
It looks like we also have a comment from Sherrard here. Watching this makes me want to get back into drawing. Nice work. Do you have any books out, or where can I find more of your work?
I don't have books, but I would, at some point in the next couple of years, I want to do like a retrospective of the past 5 or 10 years. But if you go to my Facebook page, the Buffalo News, I have a blog that's adamzyglis.buffalonews.com. And most of my work is posted on each separate blog post. If you follow me at Twitter at Adam Zyglis, I share my work there as I post them, and the same with my Facebook page, which is public. So just look me up, and I'll go through all my links to my work.
Adam, Nancy wants to know, do you work from home or in the Buffalo News office?
I used to work 100% at the Buffalo News office. The last couple of years I do partly work from home. I have a home office, and I do in the mornings I'll color, or certain times of day, sometimes at night. I add color and do some of my finished work at home, but I draw on deadline at the news because I love being in the newsroom. And talking to the other journalists, getting sort of feedback on how I communicate, because it's a mass communication job, so it's really helpful to bounce rough ideas off of my colleagues.
Adam, can you describe the idea behind this particular cartoon and how you first thought of it?
Yeah, as I mentioned when I first started, I thought it would be nice to do something not on the presidential campaign. And one of the issues that I really that is important to me as a Buffalonian, as a proud Buffalonian, is our amazing architecture here, and how for years we weren't capitalizing on it. And the last decade or so, things have changed, and we're preserving our architecture, and we're realizing it's an incredible selling point. So we're finally getting we're luring some big fish with just architecture tourism in general. And the spark behind this cartoon was the Marshall filming, the movie they're filming now with some A-list celebrities. And it's not just an action sequence on the 33. It's a really, it seems like a pretty serious movie on a great topic with great actors. That the producers said they chose Buffalo. Of course, the tax credits help, but other communities can give tax credits for film. So they cited the architecture, and anyone can attest. We have a fabric of architecture, of historic architecture, that's so unique. You can't get anywhere else. And as we're continuing to preserve it and sell that as a feature of our area, I think we're going to be better for it. So this speaks to not just the film, but the Martin House, the Richardson Towers, and even long before that, the Sullivan Building, which is incredible. So I'm encouraging our city to continue to do that.
We have a comment from Cynthia. She says, I feel extremely lucky to be here watching you at work. You're definitely the best at what you do.
Thank you, Cynthia. That's much appreciated.
And Yancy says, I took it to mean that that Buffalo's architectural legacy is on the hook and the big bad fish are coming to attack and destroy it. Interesting.
Yeah, that's the challenge with the editorial cartoons are meant to give you enough information to figure out the message, but not spell it out directly. So each one is sort of subject to a little misinterpretation. The goal is to minimize how much of that is, but part of it is you're communicating to an audience that sort of is informed on the editorial page and knows sort of the topic already. So you're kind of dependent on the fact that they may have certain assumptions about that issue. I mean, in this metaphor, it's really cartoons just speak in metaphor, and it's meant to just suggest we figured out really how to lure these big fish now.
And for anybody who might be tuning in right now, we are live with Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist Adam Zyglis from the Buffalo News, and what you're watching now is a sneak peek of his cartoon for tomorrow's paper. Feel free to chime in with questions in the comments below. We'll try to answer them if we can. And Jamie from Sacramento, California says, great opportunity to watch your creative process. I just taught my class on editorial cartoons in my 8th grade art class, and my presentation did include a few of your works.
That's great to hear. I think cartoons and using them in the classroom is amazing because it engages a student who normally wouldn't think about current events to start thinking about current events, and it activates parts of their brain in terms of critical thinking and creative thought. So I think they're just tailor-made for the classroom and for development. So we're proud of our editorial cartoon contest we have for middle schoolers and high schoolers. We just announced recently the winners for our cartoon contest, which we received over 600 entries, and the winners were really impressive, as they are every year. But the level of entries just in Buffalo, 600, is extremely impressive, and and you could tell the kids are really just engaged by the process. So thank you for doing that. Keep it up. I mean, the teachers, we can't thank teachers enough for what they do, and I really appreciate you using my work.
And Peter wants to know, Adam, What happens if you slip while drawing or misspell a word? Do you have to start all over again?
Whiteout, thank God for whiteout, and Photoshop. I really do clean up, I would say half of my drawings aren't, maybe half of them are completely identical how they appear in the paper, but half of them I touch up, I clean up some of the lines once I get it scanned in. I will use whiteout occasionally, but it's better to take a few minutes break from looking at it, and then after you see it on the computer, it's a good editing process. And I will make typos occasionally, which I'm thankful I have good copy editors. And it's funny how written words they look different than printed words. So certain words look wrong, but they're actually spelled right, and vice versa. Okay, it looks like we're pretty much done until I kind of play with it on the computer. So at this point I'll scan this image two different ways. Like I had mentioned before, I'll scan it as a bitmap to make it, and this is how it appears, about that big. This is a different cartoon. And it darkens up quite a bit as a bitmap. And then I'll scan it a separate time and then I can add digital watercolor. And really, I draw the cartoons these days knowing with color in mind, and they hold up on their own in black and white, but it's sort of a balancing act where it's got to be able to work just as line work, and then when I add color, so I'm not really, I can't just go full black and white. If I would, I'd probably make it a lot more dense like I used to. So I'm letting it breathe a little bit more these days in terms of the final artwork. And from there, the color, especially with something like this, will look really nice with the colors of City Hall, like blending into the earthworm and the Lake Erie, waters. So I think this one is kind of really made for color. So tune in. Tomorrow morning I should post this, sometime around 10 a.m. Or a little before. So yeah, thanks again for tuning in. That's sort of a quick behind-the-scenes look, although it lasted quite a bit of time answering questions. So yeah, and if you have additional comments, you can email me at azyglis@buffnews.com or find me at Twitter at Adam Zyglis or Facebook. So thanks again. I appreciate it.